You are listening to episode 176 of the Peaceful Mind Podcast. Welcome to the Peaceful Mind Podcast, a place for creating the peace of mind you need to be the best mom you are created by God to be. If you want to bring more balance, more joy, and more peace to your motherhood, this is the place for you. I'm your host, certified life coach and Catholic mom, Danielle Tienel. In the name of the Father, of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit, let's get started. Well, hi everyone. How are you? I am Danielle Tienel. I'm your host of the Peaceful Mind Podcast, and I am so happy you are here. I will tell you that I am so super excited and also a little bit scared of this episode that I'm recording. So it's a little bit different in that I don't have any points written down. I don't have any steps, tips, or strategies for you. And so this is going to be a total off-the-cuff episode. And I don't know if this will sound run on or if it won't be interesting to you and all, but I'll just tell you why I'm doing this episode with no kind of plan. And that is because of two things. One, from something that my own kind of client brought up to me. And then two, something a mom who is just entering my world, just getting a little bit to know me. I have, maybe that's how you met me, but I do have this quiz out there on Facebook and Instagram that's called What is Your Catholic Mom Personality? And I made it in fun, but I also made it where it's very strategic and that I do offer help in the answer that comes from it. But when you are a participant in that quiz and then you get some emails from me, there's one email that asks you to fill out a survey. And the survey is literally like market research for me that I am able to, if a mom answers it, I'm just kind of asking them like, what are you struggling with in your mom life right now? And what would you want to be different? And then I ask them if there's anything else that they would want to learn from me. And I do this because I want to create content that is super relevant to all of you and that's hitting you where you are in your busy mom life right now. And I got back one of these surveys where one of the moms said, I'm just going to read it to you. Let me pull it up here. She said, when I said, is there anything specific you want to learn to me? She said, I'm really curious what you have to say on all of these points and struggles that I'm having in motherhood, which if she stays in my world, she'll definitely hear aspects and she could go back and go through the catalog of podcast episode. And I'm sure that I have touched on something that is totally relatable to her. But she said she wanted to know more about my story. So she must have read the About Me page on my website, which gives you a little snippet. And I mean, it tells you the gist because she said that I said that I got sick and it sounded like that turned into a blessing in disguise. So I'm figuring she read that on the website and that is true. But she was like, can you share more about that? Can you share about the realization you had about your priorities and changing it? And so between that and then a client this week, there was something where we were talking about how she, with her work with me, she's now thinking, I might want to become a coach. And I'm like, yes, absolutely. It's amazing. But one thing we talked about is that you, as a coach, this is definitely myself included, that you then want to be a product of your product. And that means like I regularly hire and have my own coach to help me navigate things as well. So I don't just ask others and tell others that your life will exponentially be better when you learn what I have to share and that you have the support, accountability, and guidance of a life coach. And so she also had said, like, I don't know what my story is. And I said that we all kind of have our own story about how we want to, or what brought us to us coaching. And so with those two things kind of happening in my world, it tells me like, okay, well, maybe, because I never know, maybe this would be interesting to my listeners to really hear what got me here today. And I will tell you that the reason why I'm a coach is because everything that I teach others, I was taught, and it transformed my life exponentially in so many positive ways. And that is what now I'm called to not keep all of this secret and to serve. And I have chosen that the avenue I do that is through an online life coaching business. I just thought that it might be interesting, since two people asked for it, that there might be 3 or 4 or someone else, or maybe there's just those two and they'll listen to the podcast and they'll be happy. But I thought that I would just tell you a little bit about my story, a little bit more expanded. But most of all, what I want you to kind of hone in is the transformations that took place in all of the decisions that I made to get to where I am today. All right. So that's kind of what I have in mind. So I'm even trying to think, because again, I don't have points, where I want to take you back to how it all started. And what comes to mind is the place to start is to just, first of all, to let you know that I was born into the Catholic faith, baptized as a baby, and that I have always been Catholic and have always felt like I've had a really strong connection to my faith, and in particular, the Catholic Church. So I haven't really had a time where I would look back and say that it was not something that was a main pillar to my life, and what I think is just that grounding, anchoring thing that has helped me and that I navigate to. So first and foremost, that is the most important part of who I am. But I also, and I'll just take you and start to the late 90s. So I can, there's no secret that I tell you that I am 48 years old right now. So in the late 90s, when I was in my early 20s, I was very interested in self-help, concepts and books, but I did watch the Oprah Winfrey Show. Now, again, I would keep my faith and my beliefs as the anchor, but I loved learning what the self-help world had to offer, as far as looking at the bright side and the positive and things that would help you feel better about yourself. And so just to tell you I liked watching the Oprah Winfrey episodes, mostly probably the later ones, I would say. I'm not sure if I watched any of like the earlier ones. I mean, this was literally just what was on TV during that time when we didn't have Netflix, and I didn't have cable at that time or anything like that, but it was just kind of on after work or, anyways. There was an episode that I remember watching that had 2 life coaches on it. And I just remember that the 2 life coaches, now I know who they are. I didn't at the time. It was Martha Beck and Cheryl Richardson. And they were on the show. And there was just something about watching the show and what they were telling, and the people on the stage, or the people who were, the guests and things, that it just resonated with me. I don't know at the time that they were actually, life coaching them, but I just remember watching the relief in the other people from what they got from the life coaches. And I just thought about applying what they said to my life, and I liked how I felt and what they said, and it made sense to me and resonated. And there was something that shifted in me that day, or now that how I like to say is it was planted. a seed was planted that day. Because all I did, the only action I took from watching that episode was I went and bought, and I'm not sure or remember how. We do remember this bookstore we have here in town that I remember. I probably drove there and bought the books. But I bought their books. Martha's was called Finding Your Own North Star, Claiming the Life You Were Meant to Live. And the other one was from Cheryl Richardson, was called Take Time for Your Life. You can see take time for your life and claiming the life you were meant to live. You can see now in kind of envision how that I was attracted to that. And I bought those books and I read them and I felt better and thought that I was learning and probably applied some of these things and got some better results in my life at the time. So that's kind of what I remember in my mind at where this seed in my heart was planted. And I do think it was planted by God that I really liked life coaching. Okay. So that's just a very important part of my story for me to remember and tell you that aspect. And then at the same time, here in the late 90s and then the early 2000s, my career at the time is I was a professional ballet dancer. So this is what my job was. And you can imagine that there is some negativity associated with that career in the regards of, for me, it was a totally positive experience. I loved my dancing career. But as far as a negative where you are, you're always just kind of taking self-criticism, but in a way to make your technique better. And then there's just the day in and day out of working closely with people like that. And I think this is true in any job, really. So I'm not even sure why I'm even talking about how ballet or a ballet dancer would be different. I think it's in every workplace where you're just around people and your personalities and you've got tendency for there to be complaining and wishing things were different or changing. But at that time, in reading these books, I especially came across Norman Vincent Peale's The Power of Positive Thinking. And I've mentioned on the podcast before that this book, besides the Bible, I would say, has been the most impactful book on my life. But notice the title, The Power of Positive Thinking. Now, as a coach, I know and here, as I tell you the power of our thoughts, I am a huge component of positive thinking. But now as a coach and all my experience and all that I know, I am not one to understand that the goal is for us to think positive all the time or feel positive all the time. So let me just put that little caveat in there. But when I'm telling you about my story, this book vitally shifted my brain and I started being more conscious of when I was complaining and criticizing and speaking negatively to myself or other people. And this book had me refocusing and redirecting my brain to think positively. And it's that time as a dancer, as I read kind of self-help books and was in this time of my life where I wasn't a mom yet and I wasn't having all these other things pull. So I really had a lot of time, right, to do work on myself. So I took this book and these concepts and I started applying them to my dancing career, and I started to see shifts immediately. I would control my mind more while I was on stage. I would be focusing on the positive of performances instead of what I messed up on. I wouldn't allow myself to look that perhaps I didn't have that much of a career left, or what was I going to do after, or this has been my life since I was 5. I started being like, no, there is so much more to this world and life. And so when it's my time to go, God created me for more than just this. And that shift in coming to these concepts was so vital. Okay. It was really impactful. So that is something that I wanted to share. And so at the beginning of the 2000s, I then retired from the stage. I was married at this time, and I set out to be a mom. That was something that I knew that was on the horizon. And I also knew that I wanted to be a stay-at-home mom. Now, after I left the stage, I did do other jobs. And then when I did get pregnant, God gave me 2 babies at once. So I was pregnant with twins in 2004, and I did stay home. I stayed home, had another baby, and that baby just turned 16 recently. So we are just getting some perspective here. So I stayed home for years. Until the creeping in that came, that I was just like, I just needed a little bit more. I needed a little something that was like outside of my mommy life. And this was something I wanted to also bring back. So here, this is the part where it's not like really succinct, that I'm jumbling around a little bit, but I think it's kind of a fun anecdote. But while I was reading those books and doing work on myself and opening myself to new thoughts and concepts and the power of positive thinking, again, I was within the dance world. But at that time, I sort of became a little bit of a magnet for the other workers who realized, they're like, what's going on with you, Danielle? Like, they were attracted and a little magnetized to like my positive attitude and my happy demeanor and my outlook and thoughts about things. So much so that I was given the nickname life coach. I just, when I think back to that now, when I only had that one Oprah episode that kind of gave me a door to life coaching and then these books, but for them to give me that name, it must mean that when they were around me, there was something about how I was or the information I was giving them that made them feel powerful, made them feel that things were possible for them. And then also, like they felt more positive. And so for that, I kind of chuckle, because I know what the end story is. I know what the whole story is. And I just chuckle and just think about our amazing God, because I do believe that I am doing his work right now, that I was called, that I was meant to be a life coach, and that I've asked him to use me and the gifts that he created me for. And I just think about him knowing the whole plan, and just thinking about me watching that episode and then them calling me life coach. And it just makes me smile that he knew that this is how it was going to be the whole time. But there were other things for me to do and go through in order to get to where I am today. So now I'll go back to just the time when I'm a mom with 3 young kids. I was about to say I was a young mom with 3 young kids, but I like to think that I still am a young mom. I just happen to have 3 teenagers right now. But I was looking for something outside, and so I did. I ended up being a Pilates instructor, ended up running my own Pilates business, and I did so when the kids were in school. But I want to say that there was that chunk of life that right then, from about 2004 until, I'm going to say 2017, maybe 2017. So you can see a big chunk where I was like all in the throes of a busy mom life. You know, I was raising my kids and doing all the things and the home and taking care of it. And during that time, I have an outside business. And then there was a few other things that I dabbled in. And at some point early, when the kids were, when they were young and in probably, I would say, I don't know, before 2010 for sure, somewhere in there, if I'm kind of giving you a timeline. My girls were born in 2004. I met, I had already known a friend of mine, Connie. I'll tell you her name. She had become a life coach. And I didn't know it until we talked at some point, and she said that she became a life coach. And I remember hearing her and I was just like, oh, and it sparked something in me. It was that whole remembering the whole Oprah thing. And it's kind of like I forgot in those years of the kids being young, I kind of forgot about that little seed that was in my heart. And when she mentioned she was a life coach, she had just gotten certified. And just like I did, she then wanted to practice and practice on some people. And she's like, will you let me life coach you? And I was like, sure. Yeah, no problem. That would be fun. And so, and I tell this story in my new book, which, again, that's coming later. But, when I met Connie, we met at a Whole Foods. Okay. We met at a Whole Foods. And I remember sitting at the table and I didn't know what to expect. And I also didn't have this overwhelming feeling that I knew that anything was super wrong with my life at all. I'm sure that my positive outlook thought that things were all pretty well and I felt really blessed and that kind of thing. And so I sort of I thought well, I don't really know. I don't really know what my problems are, I guess was a little bit how it was. But it didn't matter. She was so loving and calm. And she just literally was just asking me a few questions, just the things that I do now with my clients. Let me do the heavy lifting and you just come. And this is how I know, I'm trained to be able to help you. And this is how it was with my experience with Connie. And at that point, I at first couldn't find anything, but then it came because there's always something, right? Something where we could grow in level of satisfaction. And at this point, she asked me, is there anything that you just, are challenged with or struggle with? And I was able to open up to her about my disdain for cooking meals, for being at home and being the one responsible for all the things plus a good meal. And then, of course, I layered on it must be healthy and it must be made from scratch and it must be waiting when my husband comes home from dinner, from work. And but of course there was all that leading up to it that I also didn't enjoy. Planning it, going to the grocery store with 3 young kids. Anyways, because I'm not really sure if this is too long or too much or too rambly, I'm going to cut to the chase and just say that Connie opened my mind up to the possibility that those thoughts I was having about it were optional. My belief that this is what I was supposed to do and that my husband expected it, or that this is just what good moms do or moms that stay at home or anything she really challenged me on that line of thinking. And I just want to sum up by saying that one interaction with Connie was life transforming because my life was never the same after this one interaction with her. When she showed me where I was keeping myself stuck and believing this story I had told myself for years. And I just went home that night and I talked with my husband. And to my amazing surprise, he didn't think any of the things that I thought and actually had no problem. He did of taking over that part, that task, that responsibility in our marriage and for our family. And I will tell you that to this day, my husband is the one who does the grocery shopping and cooking and everything like that. So I couldn't tell my story without telling you the role that Connie played. And she comes in the picture again in that one. And I do believe when I ask you to come to the free life coaching sessions that I offer people, that I always think that I could be your Connie, that you could come there and I could help you see something that will change your life forever. And that's whether you decide to work with me or not. And that gives me such such joy. And I do believe it's in service of our Lord, and that you then will be a ripple effect in what you learn to help other people in the world. So my whole helping mom one mom at a time and one session at a time, it goes back to that interaction with Connie. So from there, besides the transformation I got with that part of my mom life about not having to do the cooking anymore, I still stayed in the throes of motherhood, right? So now we're going to fast forward to me just having, I guess, maybe around, the girls were probably around 13. My son would then be 10. And now we're at the beginning of 2018. And this is when I am working a job outside of the home. I just told you the ages of my kids. So that means that they are in the throes of all of the activities, all the sports, all the math club, all the competitive gymnastics, the dance, the ballet, basketball, soccer, the science, robotics club, you name it, they were doing it. And then I had a home, and I was working outside the home. And then there's your faith life, and there's your friendships. And then my own parents, they had lived in my city, but the opportunity came for them to move to the house across the street. But there needed to be renovations made. And when we were doing those renovations, I said, well, we might as well do renovations on our house too, like thinking that would save time and money, which exactly did the opposite. But anyhow, what I'm trying to paint the picture for you is that I, like you moms on the other end, had that story that I had so much to do, and there wasn't enough time. And I was overwhelmed at trying to be good at keeping the house clean and being good at my job for my boss, and making sure I was the one picking up the kids and driving them back and forth, and I didn't miss the permission slip, and they had all that they needed and new tights for ballet, and what was going on this weekend, what city were we to go to for the gymnastics competition, and just coordinating all of that. And I'm even just me thinking about it and talking about it right now, I'm just like, geez, no wonder we come and say we're exhausted. And then, oh yeah, remember how I was saying I was doing the renovation? And what happens when you're in that? You are making decisions all the time. You're paying, you're looking at your budget and you're paying things, but there's decisions to be made in renovations all the time. And then I saw that it was going longer than expected. And then there were change orders. So the money was higher than I was thinking, and I just was overwhelmed by all of it. And I wasn't transformed yet through these life coaching tools. So I was totally in victim mode and feeling that life and the circumstances of life were just bogging me down. And I was complaining about being exhausted all the time. And I was just blaming my boss, blaming the kids' activities, blaming time, blaming the people driving on the streets, blaming the contractors. I kept in that story that if all of those people and things would change, then I would feel better. And there really were those times in motherhood when I was just like, really? I dreamt of being a mom. I prayed to the Lord to bring me children. He definitely answered them. He gave me 2 at once, which was all right, Lord, because he is such an abundant God. And so I just remember this. I dreamt about this, yet I'm failing and falling short and so overwhelmed. And this is not fun. And I'm not enjoying it. And I just beat myself up. Now I know I was beating myself up mentally and emotionally, and that I was the cause of it. And I say that now with such joy to know that I was the cause of it. And when moms first learn this from me, they can feel a little attacked or super disappointed. And I was a little disappointed too, finding out that no, each of us are the boss of our brains. Each of us is responsible for what we choose to think about our lives. Each one of us is responsible for how we feel 100% of the time. Our emotional life is directed by us. We're the CEO of it. It's not the contractors, your boss, the schedule, how much time you have, what the scale says, what your checkbook says, what bills come in the mail. It's none of that. You have this God-given power of your brain to utilize in a way that creates the life that you want. And so I was unknown. I didn't know this either. I wasn't listening to podcasts like you are now. I didn't have the information that is literally there of what life coaching has. And so I was all caught up in this. And when you are living a life like this, and then I want to particularly hone in on my job. At the time, the job I was doing was it was about networking and things, which is something that I do love to do. I love a people person, but it had to do with a healthcare software company. And it was just not my passion. I was never aligned with the job. I was actually sought out and asked probably because of my people skills, right? And my positivity and how people feel better around me and how they thought those skills would be amazing in this job. But the job itself, it really did almost suck the life out of me. There was nothing there was like dread and stuff going to it. And when your life is off like that, that's when I do think it's directly related, for me anyway, I can only speak for myself, of that is when I got sick. And when I tell the story that I got sick, the sickness that I had was the flu. And then I was told, because I wasn't getting better and I had to go to the doctor again, like 10 days in, that's when they said, well, you also have bronchitis. Now, I know that this is post-pandemic that I'm talking to you all, and I want to be sensitive. Then we talk about getting sick. There's the sick where it was like COVID when we didn't know how, and so many people were passing. But before COVID came, this is how I got sick enough from the flu and bronchitis that I was forced to be in bed for like 2 weeks and just really couldn't do or move anything. I remember sometimes my mom coming over and I would open my eyes and I would hear her say something. But as I was in that, I got to the point where it was just, my body didn't really move, but it was just me and my mind. And then the kids were off to school. And guess what? When I couldn't do anything, guess what happened? Everybody else kind of stepped up. Whereas before I thought I had to be doing all of the things. I had to be doing everything, or I had to do it my way. And I was a perfectionist, so I was trying to do everything and do everything great, which was only just exhausting. But when I was sick, guess what? My kids still got to school. They still got fed. They went to their activities. My mom stepped up. My husband stepped up. I'm positive friends stepped up when it came to the kids. I can't just recall right now. It's kind of like childbirth, how you kind of forget when it's over how awful it was. But I just remember for me, this time it was awful. But I also, with myself and my thoughts and the quiet and the stillness, be still and know God. This is when I started realizing that I wanted things to change. I wanted to look at my life different, think about different, that I wasn't going to just be at the effect of everything, that I wanted to make the changes. And if nobody else was going to do it, it was going to be me who had to just draw the line, put my foot down. But the story continues to say, I did get better. I did go back to that job. But the very first day that I went back, I was booting up my computer. I remember this so distinctly. I can see my cubicle. My computer was about to boot up, and show me that beach scene, which is my happy place. And while I waited for the beach scene to appear, that is when the Holy Spirit spoke to me. That is when, kind of like that, when I watched the Oprah show and I felt like something was planted in my heart, if it was like a God whisper, that's what this was. Another God whisper that said to me, you need to go home. You need to be at home. Okay. Now, I did like having something outside of the home and everything, but again, like I knew that something had to change, and I knew that this was a God whisper. I knew that this was the Holy Spirit. And so I kind of was like still for a minute and was like, did I just hear that? What was that? I know that was something. And I just kind of, again, sat there and I'm like, I just knew. It all became clear. Well, now we're getting to the meat of what's really getting to me to where I am sitting today. So that was when I did put my notice in and leave my job without like a real plan. I went home, except the plan to just reevaluate everything and take some time for myself. And I think that was the beginning of 2018. So at this point, was that 2018? I'm trying to think. Yeah. So where I was that I left that job and I came home. So I didn't have that anymore. We wrapped up the renovations, some things in itself kind of got settled, but I decided that I wanted to put my focus on me. Now, I am a very huge advocate and teach all of my mamas out there the importance of self-care. And I even go to the extreme of saying, I want you to do extreme self-care, exquisite self-care. And that's what I did. I took time to fill myself up. And the way that looked like for me was that I decided I was going to take at least an hour. And I know that some of you are not in the same place in your motherhood to be able to do that. So don't use this against you, but take the golden nugget of what you could apply to your life, whatever stage you are in motherhood right now. But I dedicated an hour and sometimes longer every morning once the kids were off to school and husband was off to work, with Christ. This is when I started reading the Gospels and doing devotionals and meditating and just really talking, journaling, and making sure that I did that first thing. Now, I want to tell you, this whole other time, I was still a practicing Catholic. I was still going to Mass and doing the sacraments and praying, but this was just on a whole nother level. And so for the next few months, when I started doing that, which also included exercising more, and it included having meetups with my girlfriends and coffee dates and connecting, I wasn't rushed anymore. I would, clean my house at leisure. And I would be able to go visit with my parents who just live across the street from me. And I was getting myself so filled up that now I found myself in such service. I would be like on top of things when it came to my husband. Is there anything I can do for you? Is there anything that you would like me to help you with? The same thing with my kids. Anything you guys need? What can I do? But the only way that I got to that point where I was in service of my family was only after I plugged up all of the leaks, got unexhausted, started doing things that really lit me up and that I loved, and took care of my mental health, my emotional health, my spiritual health. I took care of my physical health. And so everything started up leveling. And it was a beautiful, wonderful time. And sometimes I think, why don't you go back there, Danielle? But again, the way we are as human beings, we can only take so much of that until we are humans that are meant to be challenged and to grow and to create and to come up with new stuff. So for me, that came around, let's see, it was like February of that year that I left the job. And then it was a good 9 months until now it's coming back to my dear friend Connie. And her husband called and invited me and my husband out to join them at a hockey game, to have dinner and go to the hockey game. And we said yes. And when I was at that hockey game, I started asking Connie about her life coaching again. I was like, oh yeah, like what's going on with your business and tell me about it and what's it like and everything. And it was at that time that she introduced me to the Life Coach School podcast. So that interaction, when she gave that to me, I then started listening to it. And when I listened to it, and hopefully that's what I have with you in my podcast, that you started hearing and learning things that resonated with your heart, that made sense to you, that inspired you, that motivated you. And that's what this podcast did for me. And so I was in a place to receive it and to also realize that this was the time, that seed that was planted back at the time with the Oprah, it was time to like harvest it. It was time to pick it. I don't know how else to say. It had grown. Everything had kind of fallen into place, and now was the time. Because at this time, my girls were like entering high school, and my mind started to think about that in a few years they would be gone. And now I'm there. They're already off to college now, but I wanted to kind of like prepare a different type of career and have something in place. So through this, I said, I want to get certified as a life coach. I want to, as I was listening to that podcast and then I joined a life coaching program, I started learning those coaching tools and I started applying to my life, and everything was getting better and I was creating some amazing results. And then after a few months of that, that's when I was like, I have to share these with other people. I have to let other moms know that there's another way. And instead of just going around and like telling every mom I knew, I wanted to have the actual education and certification behind it to back myself up. And I wanted to learn and practice. And that is why I got certified with the Life Coach School. And that was in 2019. So in 2019, I was certified as a life coach. The whole experience was amazing. And then I did kind of like what Connie did. I started out and I practiced and I, as many people that would want to coach until I decided like, what is my like special focus that I want to focus on when I'm building a coaching practice or business. And a lot of you probably don't know this, but I knew that I wanted to have a faith-based focus in my business. I knew I didn't want to separate how I helped, who I helped, and have a business that didn't allow the most important aspect of who I am, which is my faith, to be able to be part of the mix. But I do love to home organize, and I did that for a while as one of my jobs and businesses. So at first, I went on Instagram and I was the Catholic clutter coach. That's right. And I really think nowadays, I think back that how I totally could have done that. I totally could have stayed that to my focus and made it successful. But there was something inside of me that had me just really focusing on the heart of moms. And then because that's who I am and people can relate to that, I market and focus to Catholic moms. So I draw in, but basically we know that coaching can help anyone, any human being with a brain. And for marketing purposes, for people to kind of already get to know or understand who I am or my approach, That's why I speak of it in Christian terms and faith-based terms and Catholic terms. And so I then, in 2020, really honed on all the aspects that it takes to make it a business. Because besides the art of coaching, the skill of coaching that I gained in the certification and practice, there is so much to do on the business building side. And so just to get you the idea of what's bringing me here today, so then we are in 2023, and I really kind of started in 2019. So I'm in year 4. And through that year, it's morphed. I got an advanced certification in faith-based coaching. Through that certification, I work for another coach, helping her in her large membership, but I take on my own clients. And for the first year, you could only work with me one-on-one. And then the demand got so much. So then I started seeing people in a group capacity and still doing some one-on-ones. And through that time, I've just, come up with my own processes that help. I have coached hundreds of moms. We see that we're at 170 plus podcasts that I've started. And yeah, some of those early ones, you could go back. I'm sure I would cringe at them, but I just had to start somewhere. I'm just trying to connect with moms out there who are suffering and who really need what I have to offer. And over the years, I have watched moms say no to themselves or even no to coaching, even if they came and they really wanted to, because they're not used to investing in their own self-development, kind of like what I did with watching those shows and reading those books back in the day. But sometimes there's another level of investment. I mean, we have no problem paying for like college education to get a job, yet the investment it takes for us to grow mentally and emotional, I can see moms holding them back from it. That part gets me sometimes, because I want every mom to have what I know is out there for them so that they can have a balanced, peaceful, more joyful motherhood. But so now at this time, I guess this is the end of the story. I'm looking at my recording right now, and I don't usually have episodes that are this long. Maybe you guys are listening and you can put it on double speed or something like that if you save time and just need to save time. But where it brings me now is that now I have I coach moms. I help you balance your busy life. I have a one-on-one coaching opportunities. I have a group program called Busy to Balanced, and it has recently gone to where it is a lifetime access, the lifetime of the program access group, so that you join once and you can have ongoing coaching. And then this past year, I have been building a course to help with time management that's called Divine Time, and that will be ready soon. I'm not sure when this podcast is going out, but it's just on its way. Things just, there's lots to make something like kind of come out and birth it. And I've also kind of mentioned here and there that this past year I wrote a book, and that will be available. It's already available on maybe I'll be able to put it in the show notes, but again, by the time that this is gone out, but it's called The Cyclone Mom Method: How to Call Upon Your God-Given Power to Remain Calm, in Control, and Confident as a Busy Mom. And then I also took the first 100 episodes of this podcast and distilled the transcripts down into bite-size, just kind of powerful treasures of wisdom. And I put that together into a book called The Peaceful Mind Bible for Busy Moms. And I'm working on that and publishing that right now. So many amazing things that I have to stop and praise God for. I have to thank Him for planting that seed and for being with me on the journey and for introducing me to Connie and to the life coach school, and for all the moms that I have met or have entrusted me with their lives and their minds and their hearts, that I realized that none of this would be here if it wasn't God's plan and God's will, and I've asked Him for His help. And I also just want to give my gratitude for the journey that it took me. It exactly happened how it was supposed to, and that is my story, everyone. I cannot let this episode go like to an hour, so I'm gonna wrap up, but I want you to know that if you are listening on the other side, that I have prayed that you're an answer to a prayer, because I asked God to connect me with who He thinks is a perfect fit for the offerings that I have, and just by being a listener or to connector, if it's some help, that in His name, I just ask to be a channel of His peace. And so that leaves me to my curious coach mind saying, I wonder what you all thought about that. Was there something about it that resonated with you? But to the person who wrote in on my survey, when you say you're curious about me getting sick and how it turned into a blessing and how it made me realize and change my priorities and circumstances and tell you more about that, I hope this episode was exactly what you were looking for. And if anyone else was interested, that's kind of how I got to where I am today. So with that, I'm going to just thank you again for being here, especially if you made it to the end of this podcast, and for listening. And if you do find that you love what you're hearing here, I would just ask you to share it. That is a wonderful way to get the help out in the world to more people, to not keep it to yourself, and to go make somebody else's day or somebody else feel better, that they might feel better after listening to something they heard on the Peaceful Mind podcast. So, all right, listeners, I love you so much, and I will see you again next week. Bye-bye. Thank you for tuning in to today's episode of the Peaceful Mind podcast. Are you ready to take everything I teach you here and put it to work for your own life? To really learn how to have peace of mind no matter what is happening around you? If so, I'd love to have you as a client. As your coach, this is where you'll get personal and focused time on your own mind, using life coaching tools, concepts, and proven life-transforming wisdom, all through a faith-filled lens. To learn more about how we can work together, come on over to danielleteenel.com. There, you'll see how to sign up for a free coaching consult and learn how to get started. Until next time, peace be with you always.